All right, so Roisin, nice to
Hi,
see you
Susan.
again. Hi. It's been a while, so we're catching up with each other again. We have so much to talk about. Lots has happened in the past few weeks, and
Mhm.
it's just really nice to keep in touch. Many of my viewers really enjoy your insights. I certainly do. And also we today we thought we'd have a chat about the help or the support or the importance of astrology and our spiritual path throughout our own lives and in general for people. So do you want to kick it off and maybe share your ideas of how that blends so nicely with life?
Well, when I think about astrology, because I don't really know the science of it, you really know the science of it. It's what you do. It's what you're about. Where I really connect to it on the intuitive level in my life. But it's amazing that to me it's not taught in schools. It really is amazing. When I went into the schools and I started to teach meditation, I realized the importance that it was for the children to understand what they were feeling, what they were experiencing, and how the planets and the cosmos was there to help. And I used to always say to them, the cosmos is the workings of the clock, and human is the hands. And it's like this divine harmony happening, and we should know more about it
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it's a gift. To me, it's a gift, like the three wise men. It's a gift, and all of us, should own this gift and let it help us. Now, I know people would look in the paper for astrology and then read their star sign, but that's not astrology. You know
yeah.
what I mean? And then that can put a negative on it. Where people then judge it, and that's not what it's at all. Like, to me, it's an amazing guide into your sacred map of your life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah.
You think
Yeah,
so?
and it's also it expands into the vastness of who we are. Like it's not just this lifetime, but we can see our family, we can see our prior experiences in lifetimes, we can see how big we are. So it's not about this moment and sort of this difficult struggle that we're having in this three-dimensional experience of life, but that so much of who we are is just it's connected to so much of what has already been and what is coming and
You're right.
other beings, other lifetimes.
And
So
it's such a tool, isn't it,
yeah,
Susan? Like, it really is an essential tool. They talk about the toolbox. This is an essential tool in your life that you should be connecting with, and you don't have to be a astrologer like you, but you can learn more
yeah,
about the planets and how they're affecting you. Even that small part helps you, doesn't it?
exactly. Especially I think when people are going through difficult times, because so often people think that their difficulties are kind of like a punishment or some kind
Yeah,
of feeling of being
it's a
outcast
personal thing
or
happening.
yeah. And so the idea for me, the beauty of astrology is that it depersonalizes so much of the struggle. And I was just saying to somebody today in a comment that they put on one of my videos where they'd been struggling for so long. Their whole life felt like a big struggle, and I said, look, there's this way of living that is beyond this physical manifestation of the body and relationships and all of that, and that's where we can learn what is my astrology chart about. Because the person was suggesting their eighth house stellium is a real
Mhm.
big problem, and I can absolutely imagine that as an astrologer, the challenge of that. I understand the difficulties. Leo sun in the eighth house for a Capricorn rising. That's hard. It's not an easy road, but it's a spiritual road. It's very deep karma, and it's karma that clears family karma, especially linked to the father. And when we understand it's bigger than who we are, then we have a sense of purpose and mission as well. Then it's kind of like, oh, right, there's this whole thing.
When you think about that, Susan, do you think, to me, it gets the ego out of the way? Because when you're going through a trauma or struggle, the ego tells you, it's about you, and this is happening to you, and it's in your world. And what astrology for me does is says, no, no, no. There's so many people going through this at the same time with
Yeah.
that alignment as well. So it's not an ego thing. It's a journey that you must accept and get the
Yeah.
gold of. And I feel it really stamps the ego, puts the hair on the snake kind of
For
thing.
sure, exactly. And also that sense that where the ego makes us feel isolated and separate.
Mhm.
And it's great that you mentioned that word trauma because when we're traumatized, when we've had trauma, right away now in recent life or even in early life and so on, it has an impact on the prefrontal cortex. So the thinking mind shuts down, and our fear, the amygdala and the fear, the reptilian instinctive reactionary brain kicks in, and so we're no longer able to see future perspectives. We're no longer able to see a big picture because the focus narrows down on what we're afraid of. The focus narrows down on what it is that we need to be alert to, and
That's
so
right.
that trauma that really heightens the sense of ego and menace and threat. And when we recognize, oh wait, I don't need to feel that way. I don't need to feel vulnerable. I'm realizing I'm just this big, I'm part of a bigger
A
picture,
bigger
and
picture.
it's all happening through me, not happening to me. And
Exactly.
yeah,
That's it, Susan, isn't it? It's
yeah,
happening through me,
yeah.
not at me. And once someone finds that, that is a freedom straight away.
For sure. Yeah. And
Definitely.
this is what if nothing else, then people can hear this from us right now, where it's that whatever difficulties you're going through right now, it's certainly not your fault. It's not something you're being punished for. It's not something that you have to feel you're alone in dealing with. It's that you're here to learn from this, and there's a bigger picture that needs to be remembered. And so know that whenever you're living through fear, and we're being kind of trained also through our current news media and the government and the messaging that we get every day, even including from advertising, we're trained to feel this fear and inadequacy and paranoia, and so it keeps us in that animalistic brain that stops us from our creative process, our focus on the bigger expansive connection. And the prefrontal cortex allows us to choose and relate to each other. It allows us to connect with each other. And as long as we just have to remind ourselves again and again that if I'm living in fear, I'm not living in truth. So I'm
That's correct.
even if we're not sure what the next best choice is, at least we can tell ourselves, well, this is not true. This is not real. And just to step back and try and slow down and get some perspective. And just as a really quick aside, one of the fastest ways that we can do that is to come into the physical body, to breathe and breathe through the heart, and just take long and slow, deep inhalations and especially long exhalations. And that will slow down that stress response. It slows down the anxiety just enough just to give that gap of perspective that people might need so that they can get out of that feeling of desperation and challenge.
It is. It's sometimes when I think back, to my childhood, which was, really quite violent, and my father was an alcoholic and was really abusive, um, and I remember my time. 15 and a half is when the fear became power. It was amazing when
Right,
I heard a voice saying, it's this is a journey that has been picked.
right.
Transform it. And in that moment, the fear that was given to me in the situation of my family childhood transformed within me, and something, I don't know, it must have been just how my life was going to be. It was quite amazing, and all the fear that was put on me almost became my power. So
Yeah,
it was, and I had done it by itself, and I heard the voice, and then I just followed that. So it's, opportunity for people to realize that when you're in a sense of an abusive situation, especially as children, and in that way, that if we can allow ourselves to go in that true understanding ourselves through our astrology chart, that can support us to transform those fears.
yeah, exactly,
I was
exactly.
lucky, if I say it in a way, unlucky but lucky in another way.
Yes,
How
exactly. It's all in the timing of it, isn't it? It's like
it
which,
is.
depending on which side of it you look at, it feels unlucky or
Exactly.
lucky. Certainly, as we're sitting here, it feels lucky. But
Mhm.
yeah, and I have a similar kind of experience. My father was also an alcoholic, and it was never a physically violent home, but there was always this kind of threat of violence, and he was a very angry person, especially when he drank. And I mean, a good person in general, I have to say, this is one of those stories where I don't feel like the abuse was not debilitating, but it was there.
Yes.
And it shows in my natal chart. And what's really interesting is when you see aspects, for example, with Sun Saturn, as I have in my chart, and that often is a reflection of difficulties with the father. So, and I have that in the ninth house, which is the house of the father, but it's also the house of God. And what can happen early on in life, and certainly was my story, was that there's a resentment and a distance and an anger with the father and a feeling of rejection. So even when I was a teenager, I was like atheist. I couldn't even bear
Right.
going to church. I didn't want to
Yes.
know. And I didn't speak to my father. I would speak to him sort of through clenched teeth, for a long time. And I was just resentful. And then I realized through a lot of different ways, but especially through astrology, that actually I was disowning myself and I was disowning my own authority. I was disowning my own capacity to be an authority and to be in my in my decision making, in my fathering kind of role of my own life,
Yes.
organizing my own life, creating the best sort of orientation for my life. I was lacking orientation because I kept blaming my father for not being there in so many ways. And then when I got that, it also allowed me to reconnect to like God the Father, not in any particular religious way, but in a
Yeah, but just
profoundly spiritual way, and to
yeah.
connect to God, to connect to life through this bigger picture. And that is, again, through the grace of astrology, understanding that this was all there. It was all happening.
It was all there.
It was all happening the first breath that I took. It was already happening in the experience of my parents before I was even born. But this is what I came in with. So that meant that on some level, I just had to go through that.
Yes,
It
it's a
needed,
part.
yeah. And when you see that, and you can, I love being able to point that out to people, and you see the look on their face, it's like, oh, right, yeah. It's like, this just was already going to happen, and it's
So
not
yeah.
condemning you to anything in particular, because you can still choose what you do with all that, but it's not personal.
Yeah,
It's not personal to you. It's happening through you.
that's right. I would say not personal. It's powerful when you know it's not personal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to jump in, like, I'd like to have a look at today's transits on that note, because what's happening really now is very powerful in terms of what we might describe as our personal identification. I'll just tuck it up right to the minute. We have Chiron on the North Node in Aries.
Oh, yes.
Tomorrow on the 19th, it's exact, but it's been exact. I mean, it's close enough to exact for days already and will be
Yeah.
through much of next week. And that's very much about this idea of who am I and any wounding around identity. And I find that in our modern times, I don't know about you, but certainly much more so since social media has become a really big thing.
Mm.
I find that a lot of people, particularly young people who've only ever known social media, they
Yes.
really struggle with their identity. They really
Oh,
struggle with their sense of who am I? And they perhaps over identify with a way of being, with an image of themselves, like
what
labels, really
what
big.
has been sold to them, really.
Yeah,
Yeah, this false self from society,
yeah,
and the children don't know, who they are, and that's interesting when you're talking about that, Aries, because I'm in the last really month, the change in my life has been phenomenal. I'm becoming more human.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Can you talk about that? Because I find that just amazing. Yeah. I just really briefly, for those who haven't met you yet, I just want to say, on your channel, of course, people will know you, but on my channel, maybe some people haven't met you yet. Roisin is a seer. She's a healer, and she works through messages that she receives, and people coming to her from beyond the veil. And so this three-dimensional world is kind of something she needs to keep remembering to navigate.
Yeah.
so, so tell us about that, feeling more human lately.
Yeah, I actually
No,
think
and just to point out to the others, the North Node for Roisin, the North Node has just crossed the Saturn in her chart. So the last 2 months, the North Node has been on Saturn, and Chiron would have been going back and forth over Saturn, which is of course about this kind of grounding and connecting in a real sort of earthy way, earthbound way, as it were, and in her sixth house of everyday work.
yeah. I
Yeah.
think this is the biggest challenge of my life to date. I didn't, I was unaware that I was actually not so human. Now, even though my husband or my child used to say to me, "Mummy, what world are you in?" And I used to think the same world as you. But it's not until actually in the last 2 months I actually realize I have been in a different world, but actually I haven't been fully in my body in this different world. I really now understand the feeling of humanity, which I never experienced before, which is
Yeah.
really,
You're joining the rest of us now in these.
yeah. And I didn't realize in that way, because maybe you can tell me from an astrology point of view, Susan, but I have always been very like a magic carpet, high looking down. And I thought that's everybody felt that way. And I'd say, come on, waking up, get your energy, feel your energy. And this lightness of being was always around me and through me. And the last 2 months, even when I go out shopping, I feel my feet heavy. I can feel people's bodies heavy. And I almost feel like, those big old weights with a big concrete weight with a hook on it that you
Yeah,
set on the
yeah, yeah.
ground. I'm thinking, what is going on? The earth is becoming heavy, but it isn't. I'm becoming earthly. It's
You're
almost like
feeling.
back to front for
Yeah,
me.
how funny. Yeah, you're feeling it now. That's funny. I mean, yeah, I mean, of course, it's a new experience for you, but that's how many people experience day-to-day life, and they have the opposite problem where they find it difficult to experience much more of the spiritual life or the invisible realm. Not so obvious for many people. And yeah, so you just so for people who understand astrology, Roisin has Neptune on the ascendant in Scorpio, with Mars in the first house too. And so that's already quite a very spiritual aspect, but also it's trine Chiron on the IC in Pisces. And so this very intuitive, very spiritual, coming from, it's part of your family lineage as well, isn't
Yeah,
it? There's people in your family already doing this kind of work. So that's quite a big thing. By the way, that Chiron in at the end of Pisces, which is conjunct my Mercury, which is why we connect so well on this
connected.
stuff. But it's that's also where we're getting Neptune coming. You're getting that big dose of Neptune this year on your Chiron. And Saturn and Neptune will be meeting your Chiron next year, particularly, but it's building up to that already. With the Neptune. So 2025, 2026, I'm looking forward to what's going to happen to you.
Yeah, but it's not interesting that you say there, Susan, and our listeners can hear that, is that how we met, and when we looked at the chart and you explained to me that we were the past life together. So when you have an issue in your life or someone's causing you a problem, whatever, and through astrology that can support you to understand that you're clearing maybe a karma into dharma. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, for
it's
sure. And
brilliant.
that's
It's
it.
so
And
important.
there's a purpose and a meaning behind the relationships that we have.
Yeah.
Some are super fleeting and they're very transitory, but they still might be one of the most important influences on our life. So even if you meet
Mm.
somebody, I've had just extraordinary experiences of meeting people in the duration of a train ride or a flight that I've taken. And it can really influence you. It doesn't have to be like a lifelong relationship, but our synastry, or the combination of charts and the way that we connect with people, is very meaningful. And you don't know from necessarily what lifetime or what other experience is happening. You can only kind of surmise, but it's big. It's very big. My Neptune is on your ascendant, so there's a lot of things that we have that are gelling. And then when we looked at our children's charts, that was
Oh
phenomenal. The way that
wow, that
our
was phenomenal.
the way that our children line up is almost terrifying, in the sense
It
that
is.
it's so powerful. There's something bigger here going on that just brought us together. And so when we kind of let go and say, okay, I don't know what this is all about, but I know that there's some kind of meaning and purpose behind all
Mhm.
of this. So then we can just let it flow and let it be and see what's coming from it. And that's really powerful.
Yeah. So tell us what you were saying, Susan, about what aspect is coming up.
Yeah,
Um,
this Chiron North Node, so Rahu North Node, Chiron it's very much about healing our sense of insecurity, sense of who we are, who am I in my lifetime, and who am I in the role that I play in life, wherever Aries is in your chart. So that'll be different for everybody. I've done other things about this in other videos, so you'll find that, and I'll do a video about the full moon coming up. So I'll mention that again because there's a full moon on the 24th that I want to talk about. And so, yeah, that Chiron North Node, I think, is an opportunity to really start to understand how when we fixate too much on an egoic identity, and that includes also our, like, the ego is not all about being big-headed. It's often
No.
about insecurities. And that includes labels that people get when they're very young. Chiron in Aries has a lot to do with early life wounding. Chiron anyway often relates to early life wounding around relationships of love, relationships of trust, and so on.
Right.
It'll be different for different people, but Chiron in Aries, sort of in general, is about self-esteem and about having been perhaps put down or having been boxed in a category. And you find a lot of, especially young people, I think it seems to be, again, for me anyway, associated with social media. I don't think that's been helpful in this sense. There's a lot of connection to I am like ADHD, or
Yes, yes.
I'm a highly sensitive person. So there's a connection that they hold on to, this kind of grip that they hold on to in terms of
Identification.
identifying who I am. And that can become so rigid that it actually becomes an obstacle to personal growth and
Yeah,
healing. And
that's
Chiron
true.
is all about healing, and the North Node is all about growth. It's all about expanding our sense of what this life is about and what we're here for. And so when we put the two together, which is, again, like I said, all last week, all of this week coming, but it's exact on the 19th of February, this is an opportunity for us to really see something about our lives around, I would say, if we give it a 3-degree orb, anything from sort of 13 to 14 degrees up until sort of 19 degrees, because it's
Mm.
almost in the 17th degree that they're meeting up. Um, so you can look at that in especially in Aries, but you can look at other placements in your chart to see how that's affecting by by squares, by oppositions, etc.
Yes.
I won't go too deep into the astrology of it because I've mentioned it elsewhere, but it is an opportunity for us to really question, am I sabotaging my own growth and development by latching on to an identification that may have been something some primary school teacher said to me when I was 7 years
Mm.
old or something? Like, it can be some random comment that really stuck and we believed it. And
Yeah, and that you've got maybe your sense of value has been affected by that,
yeah, exactly.
and you
Yeah.
have to value yourself and heal it.
Exactly. And that healing is where the Chiron becomes from the wounds, a bit like you mentioned about your childhood, that from that wound and from that place of, gosh, that just really felt unfair, or it felt really painful, or it felt humiliating, whatever the thing was, because all of that can be part of that Chiron in Aries. It goes to the place of, oh wow, I realized I was holding on to that whole incident has gone years ago. I'm holding on to it, and now I need to turn that around. And by turning it around and by expanding into that North Node, that Chiron energy, which was initially wounding, which was initially self-sabotaging, becomes a capacity to help others transform. It becomes a capacity to heal other people. And it's a healing quality that once we embrace it, once we really understand, we just by the way we become a source of healing for other people. And there's this beautiful comment by Marianne Williamson. It's part of her book from like 1992, from ages and ages ago. I love this book called what's it called? Something Love.
Turn to love.
Thank you. A Return to Love. It's one of my favorite books from so long ago, 30 years ago. Can you believe it?
Well,
And
that's
and
amazing.
one of
It's,
the comments she writes is that we are staying small is keeping others small. So by and I'm paraphrasing here, it's a much more beautiful passage than that. But when we allow ourselves to expand, when we allow ourselves to be bigger than the vision of the label that we carry. I'm not just this, ADHD, highly sensitive, weak,
yeah,
vulnerable thing. I'm actually this incredibly empowered being that can overcome so many things. Not that you have to become famous or show it off or whatever. You can be quietly living your life. but you're healed
You're
because
healed, yes. And that's, I just have to tell you something there, Susan, because that's quite, beautiful what happened there. You said Marianne Williamson. Now, because I'm dyslexic and I can't retain information, the only book that Spirit or God has told me to read, even though I couldn't retain it, was that one.
wow, that's
That's
amazing.
why I knew the name. I
That's
thought, I can't believe you're saying it. I
that's
couldn't believe it. I
fantastic.
thought, this is perfect.
Yeah.
So maybe when you write your book, because aren't you writing a book at the minute?
Yeah. Working on my on this, which is, by the way, all about this whole astrology journey through generations and how we're carrying stuff that may not even be personal to us. We're just kind of like a backpack. We're carrying all of our ancestral stuff that we're here to learn from. So it's very much part of this wounding and healing. And by healing it, I love the shamanic way of looking at healing, which is that because we're interconnected throughout lifetimes and throughout our family DNA and so on, we're healing ourselves and we're healing others too, past and future. So this Chiron North Node is an opportunity for people to really wake up. And Aries is pioneering, it's adventurous energy. It's an energy of kind of leap before you look. It's like just get in there and
Yeah.
try. It's that kind of toddler energy of the zodiac where it's just like experimenting and reaching out into something. And so it's where we need to kind of just say, well, yeah, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm just going to try. I'm just going to do
Yeah,
it.
you don't know where you're going. It's like that whole new thing of me feeling this very human energy and
Yeah,
really saying pause. And I really have paused for actually the first time in my life of work, just pause. And I just say, okay, show me.
yeah,
And whatever
yeah,
that brings up, whatever way, doubt, fear, whatever it brings up, which thank God it's not bringing any fear or doubt, it's mere bringing more confusion for me. I'm
right.
feeling a bit
Interesting.
more confused. How do I stay in this body and feel these feelings?
Oh
Of
dear God.
they're
Yeah.
uncomfortable.
I feel your pain.
you know.
So
So
actually,
serves me right.
this is actually really good too, because that's something that I've learned a lot from you, where you just trust. You have so much trust, which is it's quite phenomenal for a Scorpio rising, with Mars in first house. So much trust that you've grown to understand over the years. Because when you get that feeling, you get that message, it's time to stop and change. You do it, and that's amazing because I can let something like that drag on for weeks and months where I'm thinking, gosh, I really should do this thing.
Yeah, I
So maybe
understand
you
that.
can
You're
help
right,
others
sis.
understand that too for them. Maybe share a little bit about that.
It's almost like a door. It actually, I feel a door. So it's a wee bit like they just close it. I don't do it. It's like somebody, a higher power comes along and closes it. And I'm standing and, I said to my husband, no, I can't do that anymore. He says, but you have everything booked. I said, cancel it all. He says, are you crazy? I said, no. This is what they're telling me. He says, well, tell them you can't do that. It actually becomes funny. And I says, no. I says, you don't question it, darn. I says, I know who I'm working for, and it's not for me. It's working through me, and it's a wee bit like when one day they said you're not going to eat meat no more. I'm not a vegetarian. I didn't decide to be a vegetarian. A door closed that says you're not eating beef no more. A door closed, and I was going down to eat my beautiful lamb that I could sense as I was walking down the stairs. As I got to the bottom of the stairs, it says the door's closed, you're not eating lamb anymore. I thought, oh, and it just stopped. It's like people say, how would you live like that? I said, because when I trust it, everything falls into place. It's not about my will, it's thy will. That's how I live like.
Yeah, so beautiful. I love what you said there. I know who I'm working for. I heard a fantastic, actually a Muslim wise man who I listen to every now and then. A couple of days ago, I was listening to him, and he was talking about this notion of work and our mind is so again programmed, propagandized to work in this way that's
Mhm,
almost this. It's like just a repeated pattern of slavery and
mhm,
and he was talking about it from the point of view of sort of colonial layers of colonialism and how the way that we've been trained to work for a cause like a company, for example, a corporation or a salary, work to pay your mortgage or whatever. It's all driving. Of course, this is not new stuff, but it's just the powerful way that he started to express it. It's like everything is designed in our material world around this almost like slavery driven way
Yes.
of working, and we're doing it all for and sacrificing our family relationships, our intimate relationships, our relationship to our creativity, to our free time, to all the, even the notion of free time is like, this idea that I have free time only because I'm not doing my job. It's like, it's crazy. And that when you realize, like what you said about, I know who I work for, you realize, no, there's just this life to be lived through this energy that is always relevant. Everything that we do is relevant. There's no sort of time off. It's all part of our life as we're living it through who we're supposed to be, not the job, not the time. Now it's
Yeah.
9 a.m. So therefore I start working. It's like, no, no, it's all
That's
happening.
that's so right. It's not, the job is not how we're meant to show up. It's the being and the beauty that we are and the space that we are. Like I would say to people, the essence that you are is so, so powerful. And if you knew that when you're just doing your everyday job, I says you would be more fulfilled and receive more what you're meant to get. I said, because you actually are the product. You are
Yeah,
you
yeah,
you're the jewel, and you're just working as a human being.
yeah, yeah,
It is quite, we have to understand how rich, I mean, how beautiful we are as the essence, showing up as the woman or the man and doing these, I call human jobs or
yeah.
aspects, but we are so much more, and we have to learn to fall in love with that and let it love us.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's not there's no hierarchy in terms of the job either. I want people to understand that, because sometimes people, like even yesterday I was with a client and she was saying, like, how do I do this job, which is as an assistant to a sort of administrative job? And how do I do this job? But actually, she's very psychic and very connected
Mhm.
to, or she has a capacity to read and channel and know way beyond the material world. And I said, this, it's not separate. Don't think of it as I have this job,
Yeah,
then I do the thing. You're just always like that. And the question is,
that's you.
yeah, it's like there's a job that requires doing. It's because it's supporting, ideally supporting the growth of all of us. That you're, the
Mhm.
fact that you might be bagging groceries, or you're a nurse in a hospital, or you're a bus driver or whatever. There's a validity to all of those ways of working. It's not like there's some jobs like you've got to be a healer and then you have some kind of
Exactly.
superiority. It's, they're all good. It's a question of how you're bringing yourself through the job. And I remember this from my earliest days of yoga. One of my dearest yoga teachers would say, it's no different whether you're a street sweeper or if you
Mhm.
are some kind of exalted yogi. If you're a street sweeper, then you sweep the street to the best of your abilities, and knowing that you're doing something that is equally valuable as anybody else. And it's not that you should be sitting there thinking, gosh, I have to finish this job so I can live my life. It's really part of life. It's all part of this flow. um,
Yeah.
I just want to jump into Venus now. Just yesterday on the 17th,
Oh,
overnight from
let's see
16th to
Venus. I
17th.
like the sound of that. Venus.
So Venus is now with Pluto. Mars was with Pluto a few days ago. Venus is now approaching Mars. So, by the way, on the 22nd, which is Thursday this week, we're going to have our very first live chat with Roisin and
Oh,
I, and we're going to have Q&A, and we're going to talk about astrology, talk about spirit, take your questions. What did we agree? I think we said it was going to be 6:30 Europe time. Was that it?
yes.
Did I write that down right? I want to make sure.
No, 6:30 my time,
Your
UK time,
time. So yeah, okay. So
or
6:30.
5:30 my time, maybe. I forget, Susan.
Let's call it 6:30 Europe time, 5:30 UK time.
Yeah,
All right.
5:30
And that
time.
means that it's 12:30, let's say, on the East Coast of the United States. It would be 9:30 in the morning on the West Coast of North America, for
Wake
example.
up with us and have lunch with us, ask the questions and see what
Exactly.
happens.
Have your tea with us in the evening in Europe. And so what we're going to do that on the day that Venus meets up with Mars. So I'll talk a bit about that too. I will do a separate video about the full moon, so that's going to be self-contained, but it'll contain a bit about that too. But join in and ask some questions. But yesterday, and still active, Venus is in just over now a degree of conjunction with Pluto. And Venus conjoining Pluto in Aquarius, for me, it's a first time. Of course, all these planets now meeting Pluto for the first time in Aquarius. It's a big shift in terms of our social values. And this is why what that fellow said struck me so powerfully. And interestingly, just as Venus was moving in on Friday night, I saw a celebration online somewhere on the news in Greece. I guess it was in Athens, where the legislation had just passed for same-sex marriage.
Wow.
The law was just passed for same-sex marriage in Greece, and there was this huge celebration. I thought, oh my God, how much more Venus conjunct Pluto in Aquarius could you get?
Would be
And then I looked
beautiful.
up the Greek chart, and it turns out that their Venus in Greece is on 3 degrees of Aquarius, which is now right
Wow.
between. So it's exactly conjunct now. We're the midpoint of Venus Mars today as we speak. But I thought that was really funny.
Like that's perfect, isn't that's really showing us how important knowing that secret map of even in the countries.
Yeah, and it just is one of those things. Like, part of me, this whole Chiron North Node thing, there is this aspect of wounding around identity where people are over identifying, lots of talk about my sexuality and my gender and who am I around this, and I am like this, and you don't get to tell me I can't be any different. And part of the healing around that is just be it. Stop,
Yeah.
don't worry about it, just be it. And this Pluto Venus for me is very much about that. It's like just getting to the point where we can just be who we are and allow people to love in the way they need to love, and not get all wrapped up in how it needs to look, because part of our problem is trying to tell everybody else how to live their lives, like who are
Yeah.
we to say. um and the more that we can be free just to be that, and also recognize that
Mm.
actually, in terms of our true nature, we're none of that. Like, we're not the gender, we're not the sex, we're not
That's
the
right.
we're none of that. We're just so much bigger than that. And we can let go of all that, and also let go of these old ways, overcome fear. That Pluto is all about fear. It's about our unconscious as well, how we can dig deep and understand how to transform things. And then that Venus is very, very powerful in terms of our understanding of our relationship energy. I have to say also, just to bring in the other side of Venus, and traditionally Venus is, although she's always seen as about harmony and beauty and so on, especially in modern times, was always in Indian and ancient Greek, Hellenistic, and Babylonian astrology. She was always also seen as she was the goddess of war. So we have Mars, the god of war. Venus was the goddess of war. And so there's an aspect of that too. But we can extrapolate that and say, well, how do we engage in conflict? How do we disengage from conflict? And more importantly, from my perspective, is why are we in conflict in the first place? And that comes back to where with that Aquarius energy, where we might be holding on to ideology too strongly, holding on to a notion that things have to look a particular way. And we can take it to the other Aquarian end of the spectrum, which is, we're all different.
Mm.
We're all kind of together here, but we're also all different. And so we can still be together and be different. And I have to just say, I have a full disclosure here. My Venus is at 2 degrees of Aquarius. So I'm like the canary in the coal mine this year. So I've got Venus on Pluto. Pluto is coming. Like just today, I've got Venus on my Venus. Pluto's coming to my Venus all
Wow.
year long, basically. And next year, too, I've got Pluto on my Venus. So I'll be sharing within
This,
limits, I'll be sharing how that adventure is going for me. And as it
mm,
happens, just because we happen to be in that season, the ascendant is in Cancer for me too. So this is also happening in my 8th house, but that's an aside.
wow, that's a lot.
Yeah. So
That's
it's
a lot going
interesting that
on,
these
you know?
things are for me, like, again, another way of saying, well, I just see how we are able to use astrology, like you mentioned. Wouldn't it be amazing to have this in school? I used to work with a school
Oh,
teacher,
come
and
on.
she was brilliant. I taught her how to, because when children register at school, of course, you're not going to get their entire birth data. But I said to her, look, you can at the very least, you can see their birth date, because usually the teacher gets a birth date and the name of the child. And
Yeah.
I said, you can then find out what at least is their sun sign and their moon sign, because most of the time you can see where the moon is. Sometimes there's a doubt, but okay, most of the time we can kind of guess. And the moon sign for a child is very important because it shows us how they learn and how they feel and what's the quality of their mind. And so the teacher can kind of subtly adapt to the child, in the way that they're best geared towards learning, and how would they respond to discipline and things like that. And
Because
if
definitely
only
we
that,
have to change. It has to change, and
yeah,
in some way the involvement has to be to bring in everything. Like, we were taught that the sky is above us. I believe the sky is within us because everything is within us. We are the cosmos. And I remember about 8 years ago, I don't know, maybe that would show up in an astrology point. A spirit came to me and said, the genders are disappearing, and because we are more avatars now, and even sexualities, don't be so attached to it, be that essence in this divine avatar. And about 8 years ago it was saying to me that children also be born with both genitalia, and I've had a lot of customers now that's happening too. And I'm seeing it now that they're saying, we have to let go of this identification of this male and female and just be whatever was
yeah,
coming through. And
yeah.
and see, humanity, do you think it pushes against change because it's afraid of it? Maybe that's that Pluto, I don't know, Suzanne. And we have to embrace change because change is good. It is good.
It's necessary. Can you imagine? I always like to say to people, if you don't have change, imagine yourself accumulating the rubbish in your house all day long and all year
Exactly.
long, and for years and years, decades in and out, and you
Yeah.
never take it out.
Yeah.
That we need to change. It
Mm.
needs to, things need to go, they need to
Yeah.
transform.
I
And
think people think when you change that you have to lose something. I don't believe that. Like the change I'm going through, I'm not losing who I am. I'm now getting something else coming in. And to bring that traditional part of how I worked into the new way, it's not about losing, it's about
yeah,
bringing everything into that change. And
exactly.
that sexuality and this avatar that Spirit, was saying to me about. And I think the schools, there's that, the Steiner way of teaching.
Yes.
And the Waldorf way of teaching is very much how we should be taught.
Yeah, yeah. If only, yeah. How
Oh, that is a
Yeah, this
perfect.
what you just described really is for me the way I see Pluto. It is definitely about that transformation, and what we can see transformation as like my teacher Thich Nhat Hanh used to talk about the compost being required to have roses, to have lotus. You need no mud, no lotus is one of the gathas that he would say.
Oh,
And that compost, the notion of compost is really good to retain with Pluto, because it's transforming something into another, but all those pieces, they never existed. Actually, they were always mixed up and interdependent and constantly changing. Like, at what point does the compost become soil? One day you throw in the banana peel, and then a couple of months later you look and it's been transformed into black loamy soil. And it's like, when did that happen? Well, it was this, it's all been this whole time. It's the process of transformation is ongoing always. Like, even
definitely.
just the moment that we started this video until now, so much of us biologically has transformed.
That's
And this is Pluto. That's the energy of Pluto. It's this so people mustn't ever be afraid of Pluto. It brings the most powerful transformation into our life, and it is the thing that it's like the transformation of who we think we should be through the
who
ego,
we
through our
really are.
desire nature,
Yeah.
and it transforms that into what we really can be. It's like the compost going from manure right to roses,
Yeah,
where
right on. It's like that body, when I would be doing my meditation classes, I would say to the people, we are this earthly body and we're plowing it, and it's constant, and we are the garden that is growing up.
yeah,
And this richness, and that's that deepening aspect now of me really being in this garden in a new way in my body and finding a richness.
yeah.
And when you talk about that Venus, then um, Susan, sorry, you were saying something there about the Venus and the Mars coming together. what were you saying there about
Yeah,
that?
so that happens, it's already happening now. So it's again
Yeah.
a kind of a slow building transit that's kind of more or less all this week. And on Thursday, it's exact. And when Venus and Mars come together in Aquarius, it's a new cycle of relationship. And that can be understood in many different layers. It's the feminine coming together with the masculine. It's our desire nature coming together with what we want to take action on. It's our sense of balance internally, psychologically, socially, collectively. It's our sense of balance and how we want to, bring the yin yang, that masculine, feminine energy
Yeah.
together. And it's starting something new. And this is the first time it's happening in Aquarius for a very, very long time. I think it's been probably 25 years or something since we've had this.
Wow.
I can't remember exactly the date, but it's a very long time since we've had a conjunction of Venus and Mars in Aquarius. And and so it's especially strong because we've got Pluto there as well. And what you
Well,
were
that'll be
saying about,
lovely then for the
yeah.
22nd.
This is something to meditate on because we've got that, the North Node is ruled by Mars all this year, the North Node in Aries, and then Venus is ruling the South Node. So we can pull this understanding of this whole week, basically, it's all of February in a way, into this understanding of the North Node. Where am I going with all of this? How do I want to grow and expand into that Aries part of my
Mm.
life? And then the South Node, Libra energy of relationship in general, like the North Node for me in Aries is very much about what do I really need? Am I being clear about what I need? And am I on the right track? Is there any obstacle? Here's that Chiron. Is there any obstacle to
Yeah.
me taking these new steps? What doubt remains, or what am I still repeating? These old ideas about myself or old habits that I'm still repeating that's holding me back. And the South Node in Libra saying, I'm ready to let that go. And I want to make people understand also that the South Node, Ketu in Indian astrology especially, is the way I love to look at it. It's deeply spiritual. It's about releasing and trusting. It's about letting go. The North Node, it can be a bit more like obsession, and that can be a similar process with Pluto, can be a bit obsessive.
Yeah.
We want to understand that those earthly desires, those human desires, they're interesting up to a point, but they always leave us feeling unfulfilled. Like if you talk to anybody who earns a ton of money or has fame and fortune or whatever, by the time they get it, they're like, whatever, what's
There's an
next?
emptiness in it.
There's a complete emptiness in it. And so actually the more powerful force is that South Node, the letting go and let it be. And we've got this beautiful support from Saturn, for example, right now in a trine, so in a sextile to Jupiter. And that's all of January and February. It's been that way. They've been kind of tracking each other in this trine. It starts to split up in March as Jupiter moves faster. But at the time of the full moon that we have on Saturday, 24th, that is going to be, we're going to have Saturn with Mercury in Pisces, and of course the Sun. And then at 5 degrees, we're going to have the Moon. So that's all happening around the 5th degree of Pisces and Virgo. And that's trining Jupiter. Jupiter trining the Moon is a very, very harmonious aspect. So we can see that all this week, as we're trying to understand something, we're growing into a new way of seeing how we can heal through it. So the Virgo Pisces axis is very much about healing. I'll speak more about that in another video, or we'll be here for hours. But
Yeah, wonderful.
yeah, just to say that it all leads somewhere. You see, it's like what we understand is always moving us into the next place. What the belief and the understanding leads you to the next phase. It's never in isolation. I think maybe we should probably wrap it up because we do love to talk, and
Yeah,
we could go
we
on for
definitely do love that. That's our Irish energy there.
and
Yeah,
the
we
gift
do
of the gab.
the
Yeah.
gift of the
So
gab.
um
There's a,
yeah, let's just quickly tell people about the retreat that we're doing together the first week of June. There's a lot of
yeah,
things that are coming up, but we'll start with that one. First week of June, we're combining our gifts and our skill sets for an in-person retreat at
yeah.
Roisin's beautiful center called Trinity House. So people will be living together, sharing space, sharing meals, and just going deep, deep, deep into transformation.
Mhm.
What else would you like to say about that?
Yeah, I think it'll be, first of all, it's really opening people up to understanding themselves at a very deep aspect, really, on a very, very, how would I say, awareness spiritually in themselves, the weaving, because everything is a weaving, and to be able to see that and understand it. Like I said to somebody, come shopping with me and I'll show you how it works. Watch this. And I bring them nearly into another world, even sitting in a cafe, someone's eating a sandwich and tea. And I say, now, ready, watch this weaving and how I can show you how to open up, and you'll see something else happening to them. So it's to give a new perspective as we look at the chart through yourself and what somebody's going through. And then I said, now look, let's see the other aspect to it, and let that come together and the world blend. And it actually is it's an excitement, and it gives you a new edge, and I can see something different here.
Absolutely. Yeah, and working with a group, especially live, is really special, because I've always
Oh,
found that with working with groups, especially when I used to bring groups to India where it's much more intense, there's
yeah,
always a reason and a purpose we come together. Like there was always a kind of a connection. And when we start to open up to what is really going on in our lives, it's like, oh my God, you too, and you too, and you too. And
yeah,
you
it's
start
it's,
to
it's
realize,
already destined.
and that what you think is a message for somebody else ends up being the greatest message for you. And it's just like, oh my God, I would never have even thought of that. And it's
Thought
the
about
most
it. I
important
love
thing I
that,
heard.
Susan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
You're sitting in the room, and when someone's going through something, I will always say to someone, I would thank them. I said, thank you for doing that for everybody. Because
Yeah.
we're all the one heart, we're all the one soul, and
Yeah.
we're just showing up as these beautiful characters.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes what happens too is you hear something at that process in the process. Again, it might not be personal to you, but then 3 days later, you happen to be sitting with somebody and they say something, and you're like, hey, I just heard this thing, and I can tell. And it's just like
Yeah.
ongoing. And so there's that. I'll put the link to that, so people can register, find out more about that from your website where it's connected. And I finally get my act together and try and send it out also to my people. And also, I want you to mention your online training, because for many people won't be able to come doing it in person. So I won't be involved in your online training, but it'll be certainly very helpful. You're doing it, I think it was March, wasn't it? 20th.
Yes, on the 20th of March, I was guided to, hold on a Wednesday evening UK time, and that's for 2 hours for 6 weeks, and an intuitive course to show people how to connect in the way that I can connect,
Yeah.
through different energies, guides, and chanting, and on that level. And I'm excited about that. That people
Yeah.
can join it, and just really show people the magic, because it's really about, you think that you don't have it. This is what I find a lot with people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, you already are it. Let's open this up. And it's confidence people need, Susan. It's really confidence. People don't have confidence. I have to have now confidence in becoming a human, which is and and you see, I want people to get the confidence in this light, because it is so true and it is so real.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So if I can do that online and support people, and then if people coming to the course, once they're here, the transformation, I know it's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
And that collectively working together, and for us working together in the first time in the Trinity Centre, as I build it into what I want to build it. And I know that anybody that is arriving, when they always arriving, we are always going to do this,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
that's the power of that, isn't it?
Yeah. And it just kind of ripens into that moment. It's really
Mm.
lovely. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because the
So,
ego makes us, be apprehensive about ourselves, traveling, even coming on to an online course. What am I meant to remember? What am I meant to say? And it starts those barriers.
yeah.
And I
Yeah.
feel spirit and astrology actually breaks those barriers down.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
say, come on, it's just me and you.
Yeah.
Let's see what we
Exactly.
learn
Yeah.
together.
And just as a fair warning to anyone going live, there's some animals there as well. So that's also very healing when you can be
Yes.
connected to animals around you. And so for some people, it's a great discharge as well. When it's hard to connect or hard to know what to say, the animals are just there. They somehow
They
gravitate
know,
towards
don't
you,
they?
and that's also very special.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, and then so what was the other? So with that again, I wanted to remind everybody that we're connecting on the 22nd. So this week coming up,
22nd.
22nd of February, we're going to connect live. Of course, that'll also be up after if for people who can't join live. But if you can join live, it'll be my first live. So, forgive
And
any.
mine. So this
See
is
what
this
happens.
Venus. This Mars and Venus, this,
Yeah,
something's opening there it's lovely, Susan, isn't it? When somebody says to me, what are you going to say? I said, no, somebody needs to ask me a question. And
yeah.
then it comes.
And then
That's
it
how it
flows.
works.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
what I find it just happens quite naturally. Yeah. Sitting in front of the video always feels a little awkward in the beginning. It's kind of
Yes.
like, oh, but yeah, once the channel's open, it's super easy. But yeah,
Yeah.
questions, answers coming in different formats from whether it be through astrology, through our spiritual journey, and all
Yes.
the different things in between. And so I will put up a notification about the timing on my channel on the community page, and you can do the same for you. So we'll be seeing you all, as many as you can join us on Thursday. And what else is coming up? Anything else you want to mention before we say goodbye?
The only thing is that, people would say to me, you're called Trinity House, but your website's Rainbow Lighthouse. But this is an integration that's happening.
Yeah,
My YouTube channel is Trinity House, but my website is Rainbow Lighthouse because I'm starting to,
yeah,
create something new, in this
yeah.
big change. So that's the only difference. That's why that's going on.
Great,
And there's a lot of things you can get on the website. I've now give a whole freebie page of 2 years of online meditations are all free now.
great.
And then
Yeah.
that's for people just to experience and see how they feel and if it resonates with them,
Very
you know?
good. Yeah, excellent. Excellent. All right, Roisin, it was really great to catch up with you again.
Oh, it's
Always
lovely, lovely.
time.
And I'm looking forward to this Venus and Mars. It's like a beautiful cosmic dance, isn't it, of the
Yeah,
lovers?
absolutely. Yeah. Excellent. So we'll play around with that on Thursday, and in the meantime, anybody who wants to register will get in touch with you via your website. I'll put all those details below this.
Yes, with the retreat in June, they can, we have a lot of people booked in coming from all over,
Yeah, that was great to
places,
hear.
so
Yeah,
that's really lovely.
yeah,
And, we're really looking forward to that. Yeah, I really am.
absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Lots of healing coming up in this year. That's really nice.
Bring it on.
Yeah, bring it. Exactly.
Bring it on.
Okay,
Okay,
Roshi.
sister, God
Lots of
bless.
love. Yeah, you
Lovely.
too. Bye bye.
Bye.